Charini, Nirvishesha Singhavati Paskachari Desatarini. Hare Krishna, I'm very happy to be with you today. Today I want to address a very important point. And a very important point, if we understand and practice this, that will enable us to quickly overcome offenses and make spiritual advancement. And it is an important aspect of the inner attitude we need to develop as a devotee. And the title of my presentation today is Identifying the Perpetrator of a Religious Act. And we will go together to the 17th chapter of the first canto, the punishment and reward of Kali. Now, in the Bhagavatam before, marriage Parikshit qualities has been explained, that he is not just a pure devotee, he is a Mahabhagavat. The whole war of Kurukshetra was orchestrated by Lord Krishna to put Maharaj Yudhishthira on the throne. Maharaj Yudhishthira, because he was a Mahabhagavat. A Mahabhagavat means that he is the leader of all the devotees. He is the instructor of all the Brahmins even. So he is on an exceptionally high level of devotion. And it is described that also Maharaj Parikshit was a Mahabhagavat. Because Maharaj Yudhishthira wanted to retire, and he had been full of anxiety about who will be my successor. Will he be qualified? Will he be a Mahabhagavat? But then, at the birth of Maharaj Parikshit, all the qualities were described of Maharaj Parikshit. And by hearing these astrological predictions by the astrologer, Maharaj Yudhishthira was satisfied. Yes, he will be qualified. And therefore, when Maharaj Parikshit was enthroned by Maharaj Yudhishthira, and now here in this chapter 17, after hearing the qualities of Maharaj Parikshit, we hear about how he ruled the world. And here we see, because it is said, yes, when Krishna left the planets, at that very moment, Kali entered. So Kali was in the kingdom of Maharaj Parikshit. He could not act until now, because Maharaj Parikshit was a very strong ruler. But twice a year, Maharaj Parikshit would go out in the kingdom to inspect if everyone was following the religious principles, that everyone was engaged according to his occupation. And on such an inspection tour, then he came across Kali. Kali was dressed as a king and was beating a cow and a bull. Immediately Maharaj Parikshit was going to take his sword. But first he saw the condition of the cow, which is representing Mother Earth, she was crying. And then the bull had only 3 legs, one leg. He lost 3 legs. And my speaker said, yes, it's strange. You must be a deva or someone. No bull can stand on 1 leg, but you are standing on 1 leg and you are missing 3 legs there. And he asked the bull, who did do that to you, that you have lost these 3 legs? And interesting, we will study that answer a little later in the lecture, but what the bull said. He said, yeah, I cannot identify the perpetrator, one who has done it. I'm sorry. And then after that, after hearing the reasons why he could not identify the perpetrator, then Maharaj Pariksit is asking, he is speaking to the bull, and that's 1:17:22. And we will learn here now this verse. So before we read from the Srimad Bhagavatam, we are glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead with the words Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Cheva Narottanam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jyamudiyayat. Nastaveya Savatresu Nityam Bharavata Sevya Bharavati Uttamaske Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. So we'll read the Sanskrit. I think you will see it in the chat also. Raja Vacha Dharmam Bhavishi Dharmahya Dharma Sivri Sharu Padrik Yat Adharma Kita Stanam Shutsakasya Pitat Bhavet. The king said, O you who are in the form of a bull, you know the truth of religion, and you are speaking according to the principle that the destination intended for the perpetrator of religious acts is also intended for one who identifies the perpetrator. You are no other than the personality of religion. So that's a very interesting point here. Sometimes we see, due to our karma, someone does something to us. And immediately we are there to point it's his or that it's this person or that person. That this verse says that if you do that, you go to the same destination as one who performs the irreligious act. That is interesting. And it's very important to understand that. We will go a little deeper into that today. So I will read the first line for the purport. In the purport, interesting, Srila Prabhupada speaks about Jesus Christ. That says, a devotee's conclusion is that no one is directly responsible for being the benefactor or mischief monger without the sanction of the Lord. Therefore, he does not consider anyone to be directly responsible for such action. But in both the cases, he takes it for granted that either benefit or loss is God sent, and thus it is His grace. In case of benefit, no one will deny that it is God sent, but in case of loss or reverses, then one becomes doubtful about how the Lord could be so unkind to his devotee as to put him in great difficulty. Jesus Christ was seemingly put into great difficulty, being crucified by the ignorance, but he was never angry at the mischief mongers. So Jesus Christ was crucified. That when Burjan Prabhu spoke on this point, he said, "What animals they sacrificed him." And Srila Prabhupada spoke on this topic a few times, and he would say, "Thou shalt not kill." And the first person they killed was Jesus Christ. And in such a horrible way they crucified him. Sometimes we think very romantically about surrender. And how wonderful is it that I surrender to Krishna, and then we get roses with no thorns, only rose petals, everything is rose and Charanamrita. Each and every one of Jesus' direct followers were crucified in one way or another. To surrender to Krishna means to put yourself in Krishna's hands. That seeing everything, good or bad, as his kindness, a benediction and mercy. The question is, we can ask this question for each of us, are we ready for that? Everyone must answer this for oneself. It means to place oneself in Krishna's hand. It does not only offer us as mercy garlands and Mahaprasad. It's extremely heavy. Srila Prabhupada said, and Jesus, he did not become angry. For Jesus said, for they do not what they do. So I continue the reading the purport. This is the way of accepting a thing either favorable or unfavorable. Favorable or unfavorable. Thus for a devotee the identifier is equally a sinner like the mischief monger. This means that both are equally in ignorance. The one who benefits us and the one who gives us equally are in ignorance. I continue reading. By God's grace, the devotee tolerates all reverses. So one needs to have a broad vision of what one's existence is. One needs to see oneself as an eternal servant of Krishna. A good thing and a bad thing comes in that perspective as well. For the devotee, so-called good or bad, everything is considered to be auspicious. Therefore, it's not cheap to be a devotee. He is so dear to Krishna because he is a devotee. No, it's not that Krishna slaps you and then I'm not a devotee anymore. Sorry. Devotee means devotion. And devotion means continuous. It has to spring from the heart. Yes. Now, I want to go back to the point, why should one not identify the doer? Because that's what's said in this verse. So, before the Buddha said, after having expressed appreciation for the king, he was glorifying the king as the descendants of Pandu. He said, that you have questioned me about the identity of he who caused me to suffer. But the bull said, I'm unable to tell you. There are so many different philosophical opinions about who is the doer. Some philosophers claim that we ourselves are causing our difficulties. Another class said it's caused by Brahman, the Lord's spiritual effulgence. Still, the atheists say that there is no cause exists beyond material nature. So the causes are unknowable, and therefore, please conclude with your own intelligence. So that we can go back to text 19, where the bull speaks. He said, some philosophers who deny also duality declare that one's own self is responsible for his personal happiness and distress. Others say that the superhuman powers are responsible, while yet others say that the activity is responsible. And the gross materialists maintain that nature is the ultimate cause. So the first answer, the bull said, it's your own self who is responsible. That you have taken that today. That's very, very fashionable. They say today you have to take responsibility for yourself. Take control of your life. And if you don't take responsibility for your life, then suffer. That's very prominent today. And the second point, the bull makes others say it's superhuman powers are responsible. It's the gods. It's out of our control. And others say, yes, the activity is responsible. It's just your karma. You get your reactions. And the bull said, yeah, and then there are the gross materialists. Yes, what can we do? That's how material nature works. That text 20 there, the bull says, there are also some thinkers who believe that no one can ascertain the cause of distress by argumentation, nor know it by imagination, nor express it by words. O sage among kings, judge for yourself by thinking over all this with your intelligence. So in text 20 it says, no one can ascertain the cause. Like someone is beating you with a stick. Is it the stick that beats you? Is that the cause? Or is it the person holding the stick that beats you? Or is it the mother of the person who beats you that because the mother has beaten the person that is beating you when he was young, and therefore he got a trauma in his consciousness? Or is it the father who had abused the mother and therefore the mother was beating her son? That who can say? In this way, everyone in this world is bewildered. So generally, when we reflect about the cause of our difficulties, our answers are less philosophical, right? That we accuse a person or a group, but thus identifying one as the doer. If we identify this person did it, what's going to happen in your consciousness? Impressions of retaliation may deeply enter your consciousness, right? It makes a deep impression. or the mind comes up with justifiable doubts with their ensuing plans of retaliation, and that may implicate us in very painful exchanges. So this is one reason why one should not identify one who has hurt us, especially great pains of the heart. That, of course, we will want to get even. We want to get even with them, and they will want to get even with us. The fight will go on practically forever. It seems people are born to give trouble to certain other people, and it can go on like that, birth after birth. Do we want to get around to get even? So we should avoid that. That there are other reasons here. By meditating on the bad qualities of another, we will develop those same qualities based on that. So if one meditates on the bad qualities of another, one will develop these qualities. This is confirmed in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam. That I think it's the 1st chapter where it said, a grassworm confined in a hole of a wall thinks of a bee in fear. So there's the grassworm in a hole is inside and the bee is outside waiting the grassworm to come out. So yes, the grassworm is in fear and enmity, and later it becomes a bee. So when something really disturbs us, even if it is something negative, we should tolerate. That's the point. Rather, better tolerate than trying to identify the perpetrator and retaliate. Tolerate. An accurate understanding of what occurs exists on more than one level. And that's important to learn. It's not just what we observe with our senses and with our intelligence. Things are happening on more than one level. You have the level of karma, but you have also the level of Krishna's will. So what do we need to learn? So, of course, if one is unreasonably beaten by a man with a stick, one must defend oneself, or one will suffer great pains. Right? That the beater may not have the best interest in mind. Dealing on this level, that's the first level, the man must take immediate action and protect himself, even if it's seen as God's grace. We must always remember Krishna's ultimate control as the ultimate doer. So that kind of consciousness, along with our actions on the practical level, bearing anxiety and anger, will carry us to the Lord's lotus feet. All that this occurs is ultimately Krishna's will. Not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. That if we understand that, we remain free from anxiety, even amidst the great difficulty. So practical action and theoretical, philosophical understanding, both must be there, and at the same time one must act practically. In the purport of the next verse, it says that the Lord is also not directly responsible, as he deputed control to Maya Sakti, the material energy. Most important is that we surrender to the Lord and return to the spiritual world. But each living entity has been gifted with a free will. And Krishna's Maya Sakti is material energy. It reciprocates with us, independent from Krishna's desires, and thus we are under Maya Sakti. Maya Sakti is represented by the laws of material nature, which are also under Krishna's ultimate jurisdiction. In the same way as the law punishes or rewards in terms of an unlaw or lawful act, we are put in certain circumstances by the will of Krishna. And by the reactions of our previous actions, we are put in certain circumstances. Finally, everything is meant to bring us closer to Krishna. A devotee sees Krishna's merciful hand in everything. Like Narada Muni, he said to Krishna, "What are you doing with these Pandavas? You put them in so many situations of suffering and what did you do? Did you hypnotize them? They never complained. They just suffered, and their love for you is increasing." That is an important lesson for us to learn, and not an easy lesson. Markandeya Rishi, disciple of Prabhupada, he left in meantime this world. I think he was from Australia. He said to Srila Prabhupada, "Does Krishna test us?" And Srila Prabhupada said, "Oh yes, Krishna will test us." And then Markandeya Rishi said, and do the tests always becomes more difficult and more difficult? Srila Prabhupada said, "No. Once you have passed the test, you have passed the test." So that means we have to pass this test, and this is an important test here, and very important to understand. I will now read a few quotes of Srila Prabhupada to end. A few quotes which are related to this internal mood of surrender. Most verses are related to the verse that Tenun Kampamsa Samikshana Bunshat Mevat et Kitam Vibhakam Ritvakva Prabhu Dadanam Steji Vitiyo Mukti Pade Sadayabak, verse of the 10:14:8 of the Bhagavatam. So Srila Prabhupada said, "Despite Kali, if one can see Krishna's mercy in everything, and one becomes eligible to the kingdom of God." So that is very important instruction. I remember when it's about more than a decade ago, I was in serious trouble. And my Guru Maharaj Bhakti Charamaj instructed me, and that always, that one sentence remains in the forefront of my consciousness. He said, "Whatever happens, good or bad, accept it as Krishna's mercy." So that is an important instruction. And it is said here, despite Kali, if one can see Krishna's mercy in everything, one becomes eligible to the kingdom of God. And then this verse, Tatenu Kampam Sasamikshanamu, Srila Prabhupada has many times spoken on this point. He said, if we simply remember that Krishna has me put in this condition of life, then that is very nice. And then he quotes this verse, Tatenu Kampam. Then he says, a devotee is satisfied always. Whatever condition Lord Krishna has given me, that is all right. It is His grace. By His grace, I got this position. My only business is to remember Krishna at any stage of life. It's from a lecture in Vrindavan, 1974. This is another quote. Don't think that things are taking place automatically, Srila Prabhupada said. So even in reverse conditions, a devotee does not see anything happening without the direction of Krishna. Even if he is in a reverse condition or an adverse condition, which implies that things are going exactly the opposite as we wanted, it does not feel any pain. This adverse condition is also under the direction of Krishna. Why should I take this adverse position, not as the mercy of Krishna? And he quotes this verse, Tatenu Kampam. A devotee is not disturbed by adverse conditions. This is a gift of Krishna. It is Krishna's mercy. So anyone who takes in that way, as Krishna's mercy, Mukti Pradesadaya is going back to God. That is guaranteed, as he takes everything as Krishna's mercy. In fact, this principle is explained right in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna said, Deinasmin Satade Kamam Chavanam Chara Tatade Antara Praptatias Tatranam Uyate. While during your body changes, you have to tolerate these changes from youth to old age. Then Krishna says, Matras Parsitakantyas Itasnasukadukaba Agamapaino Nityastam Stikshasvabharata. And you have to tolerate immediately, Krishna says, like one must tolerate heat in the summer or cold in the winter. One must tolerate all these sensory perceptions that everything comes in your mind. And then Krishna says, Yaminavya Tante Te Purusham Purushakshapam Samdakasram Sri Tiram Somi Kalpate, missing one words. So this is the verse that says, Yamina Vyatatante Purusham Purushakshapam Samdakasram Tiram Somi Tatvaya Kalpate. It says, if you can tolerate and be equal in this happiness interest, you are ready to go back to Godhead. And here the same thing is saying in this verse, Tatenu Kampam. You tolerate everything, and you see that I accept it as Krishna's mercy. Then you will be able to go back to Godhead. It's your rightful claim for liberation. So important, this principle. It's factually the first instruction that Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita. And first instructions are very important. They are primary instructions. That if we become disturbed, this devotee did that to me and that to me, then we are far away from that point. We need to tolerate that give up this fault finding, because the fault lies within us. That and the Lord of Vaikunta has demonstrated that. When Jai and Vijay were cursed by the 4 Kumaris, Lord Narayan came to the gate, and he said to the 4 Kumaris, please forgive me. I take the responsibility for the faults of my servants. And Lord Narayan said, the fault lies in me. So that's the difference between the spiritual world and the material world. In the material world, everyone says, no, it's not me, it's him or her. That if something goes wrong in the spiritual world, everyone says it's me. So that's the difference. Everything what we experience in this world are circumstances created by Krishna. An important factor is that our karma, what we did previously. So therefore Krishna, Srila Prabhupada says, Lord Krishna is always merciful. One should not take anything as not his mercy. Tatenam kampam. Lord Krishna has sympathy, anukampa, sympathy. This from a lecture in October 1976 in Vrindavan. One who can see this anukampam, this compassion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Adayabak, his right to become liberated is guaranteed. So this is the mercy of God in any circumstance. If anyone accepts God's mercy in any circumstance and does not do anything wrong to anyone, such a person is guaranteed to get liberation. So that is the injunction of the Shastra. I have another quote, the last one on this. This is from Los Angeles, June 22nd, 1975. The devotee is suffering from adverse conditions. Then he is feeling very much obliged and says, "Oh my dear Lord, it is your great mercy that I am suffering." This is a devotee. He is suffering and is taking it as great mercy of God. Anakampa means mercy. So it is your mercy. So this is an elevated position, an elevated consciousness that so I explained the main principle, and now please, are there any questions that so please, if you have a question, raise your hand, or you can put your question in the chat box. Yes, that's fine.
Okay, Maharaj, while we're waiting for the questions, I would like to ask, so Krishna is controlling everything, he's sanctioning everything, he's controlling what happens. So what is our responsibility? What are we doing, or what should we be doing in the meantime?
Yes, what we should do in the meantime is that we should not be disturbed by this nice or adverse conditions. We should continue our service. That's what we really should do. But of course, to understand this point more deeply, we need to know that what's our part in the doing. And that's important. Therefore, if we go to the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, And that's quite revealing that so it is said, yes, 5, chapter 5, 14. Na kartrit van, na karma ani lokasya chichachi babu, na karma fala samyogams vavastu vartate. The embodied spirit master of the city of this body does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by material nature. So this verse, Krishna says, yes, it's all done by material nature. I move my hand, it's material nature. It's all done by material nature. We are not a doer, he's saying there. In the next verse he says, 5:15, Nadate kachit papam nacheva sukhitam vibhu ajnana nafitam jnanam tenamayanti antavam. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of ignorance which covers their real knowledge. Here Krishna says, I'm also not a doer. It's not me. In the previous verse he said, yes, it's not us, it's material nature. And here he says, it's also not me. So that makes the confusion total. Now, let's clarify that up. What's happening here? Are we doing or are we not doing? But to understand that, we have to go to the 18th chapter, text 14. And there is said, there are 5 factors of action. Adhistanam tathakarta karanam sapitach vidam vividas sapitach shista devam saivatra panshanam. 5 factors. The place of action, which is the body. That who controls the body? You control your heartbeat. You control your digestion. That do you control what you remember, your memory? No. It's not us who control the body. And then you have the performer. The performer is the one who acts, who does things. Here Krishna says, yes, we are the performer, we are the doer. It's one of the 5 factors. How are we doing? We are doing by desiring. That's the action of the soul. We are desiring. And by that desire we are doing. We come back to that. Then said the various senses. The senses is also the body. It's material nature, and we don't control material nature. Then you have different kinds of endeavors in the mind as a subtle body. That's also not us. So all these factors are created by the super soul. The super soul controls the body, the senses, that and what comes up in your mind. Krishna is doing that. So that's all done by material nature. But we are 1/5 of the action, the performer. We desire. And now we can go back to this 5th chapter. If you understand, because Krishna says, yes, whatever wrong or right action a man does with the body, mind, and of speech is caused by these 5 factors. And therefore, one who thinks himself the only doer, not considering these 5 factors, is not very intelligent and cannot see things as they are. So we are not the only doer. Krishna says not that we are not the doer. We are the karta, the doer by desiring. Now, by desiring, we can have 2 kinds of desires. We can have a desire to please Krishna, that's a spiritual desire. or we can have a desire for sense gratification for ourselves. If the desire is related, is egoistic and is for ourselves, then by that desire we are pushing a button to activate material nature. And that's our doing. That means we will get reactions for all our actions. If we are desiring to please Krishna, we are not pushing this button. And all our previous karma, Khalli, if we become pure, is removed. So that is important for us to understand that yes, these 5 factors of action, that what do we desire? That's the point. That's what the soul does. And without desire, Srila Prabhupada said, material desire is a subtle form of conditioning. Then you come under material nature, control of material nature. And that's what we have been doing for life after life after life. And Krishna wants us to be responsible. He says, Nadate karachit param. I'm not responsible, I'm just giving the reactions by material nature. Like a judge. A judge gives someone a death penalty and not the other one. He gives $1 million because they deserve it. So Krishna says, yes. And he makes that more clear at the end of the 9th chapter. At the end of the 9th chapter, there I think it's 29, yeah. Samam sarvabhuteshu namit veshinapya yebachantatamam bhaktyam aitate sapyam. Krishna says, I'm not partial to anyone. That he says, Samam sarvabhuteshu, I'm equal to all living entities. I just give them their karma, and that's what they get. They have done action in the past, and now they get there. And now you get karma, the reaction. But he says, but if one becomes my devotee, if one pushes the spiritual button, then I will take care of him. I will take care of him. And that's not impartiality. Everyone can decide by his actions to be a demon or a devotee. If you become a devotee, Krishna reciprocates. And then things become different. Things become much different. Because Ananya Sintiyantamam Yechna Paripasitesam Nitya Bhuktam Yogishema Famyam. Then Krishna says, I will protect the spiritual advancement my devotee makes. And I give him more and more opportunity to advance spiritually. So Krishna will arrange your karma such that you will become frustrated of the material energy and finally say, okay, Krishna, I give it up. So he helps you to make spiritual advancement. There is this verse 1088:8. Yasyan Anagrinami Harishitatanam Sanai. Krishna says, yes, when I give my mercy to someone, I take everything away that my devotees are attached to. And then he suffers. But he suffers to never suffer again. And that is the Lord's mercy. Then we become free, we give up the material desire. And that is, so Krishna gives us situations that are good for us. So that's a bit the basic principles from Bhagavad Gita. So, any question further?
Okay, still waiting for devotees put some questions or raise their hand. But what you mentioned about we are 1/5 responsible because we desire uh, things and then they sort of manifest with material nature. Now, thing is, I mean, even our desires, that because we are controlled by material nature, so even our desires are controlled by which mode we are working in, isn't it? So it's like we are really stuck in this because even our desires are controlled by the material nature, and depending on our birth and our surroundings, our association that we have built, our family. So it just seems like a hopeless case. It just seems that Krishna has to place you in the right place or in the right circumstances or the right surrounding for the right things to materialize. Otherwise, you are stuck in such a hole that you're not able to escape. So again, you don't have any control over. Your desires are controlled by your environment.
That is an interesting philosophy that I think the anthropologists, they say the same. We are a product of your environment, so what can you do? Everything is a product of one's association and so on. But there is an other aspect here, and that's an important aspect. And that we learn from this presentation today from the Bhagavatam. The 4 legs of the bull represent truthfulness, cleanliness, austerity, and mercy. Only the mercy one is left a bit. The 3 other are disappeared. So these are lower principles of religion. They must be followed by anyone. Therefore we follow the 4 relative principles. They are lower. But a devotee is concerned with the higher principles of religion. But first you have to follow the lower. That's the first thing. You have other lower principles. You have these 4 pillars, but you have also dharma, artha, kama, moksha, are also lower principles. You have also the varna ashram, kshatriya, brahman, vaishya, sudra, brahmachari, shriyasta, vanaprastha, sannyas are also lower principles. But these 4 pillars are very important. If you follow these 4 principles, you will gradually come out of the sphere of lust, influence of lust. And then, when you come out of that by having a religious life, you will be able not to identify with the mind. Yoga is to do with the mind. You understand that point? The mind, that. So, and if you don't identify with the mind, what will happen? One must strictly follow it. And if you are going to some purification of the heart in your life by good sadhana, you will become purified and you will come to the point, because that purification to the mode of goodness, that we have in our hands. We can try to live like a devotee, getting early up and bath and so on. And what happens then, that's explained in Bhagavad Gita 270. Apoyamanam achala patishtam samudana papavashanti yadvat tatvat kamayam pavashanti sarvesa santim apnoti nakami. Person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enters like rivers into the ocean, which is ever refilled but is always still, cannot achieve peace and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So what happens then? These desires, they pop up in your mind. Your desires can come from different sources. You indicated it comes from material nature. Many times it comes from material nature. And where does this, and the desire pops up in your mind, where is this coming from? The desire, where is this coming from? Well, Krishna knows in your previous lives you have had so many desires. And what is the characteristic of a material desire? It can never be fulfilled, a material desire. There are two things. You have material desire, two things that can happen. Diet, viscere, pumsam, and so on. It's not fulfilled and you become angry. And when it's fulfilled, then you feel not satisfied, you want more. So it's never fulfilled. And Krishna knows that. And he's so kind because we have forgotten our previous life, but Krishna did not forget. So he put his desire again in our mind, not all at the same time. So then, what do you do if that desire comes up in your mind? Two scenarios. I'm not a devotee, I'm not following these four regulative principles and so on. Then one identifies with the mind. One thinks, yes, that's my desire. And one thinks, yes, and this will work. And one runs after it. But the devotee is different. If one becomes purified and this desire comes up in the mind, then first the devotee looks at the desire and says, oh, is that what Prabhupada wants me to do? Is that what my spiritual master wants me to do? If that's not the case, forget about it. And the desire vanquishes after some time. One forgets about it. So that's the way to become free from the influence of material nature. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, Maharaj, absolutely. And I think this also the role of the devotees of the ISKCON movement, and this is what Srila Prabhupada set up this organization, so we can go out and pull people from their holes, or help them out if they are stuck somewhere. Most people are misguided in life, isn't it? So this is the responsibility of ISKCON to go out and bring people to realization, to give them Prabhupada's books so they can understand how to get into the mode of goodness from wherever they are. So yeah, it's fantastic work being done to help people like us. Amazed, myself, that we learn that there is more to life than what we've been doing. So we've learned a lot and trying to improve our lives and try and get closer to our destination, which is Krishna.
Yeah, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, one who explains the supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end he will come back to me. There is no servant in this world more dear than me, nor will there ever be one more dear. So that's the way to become dear to the Lord. Give this knowledge to others. I'd say we have a question in the chat. It was a direct message to me that I will read it. Thank you for the class. Your class reaffirmed what I learned very recently. Would it be possible to have your email? I may have some questions. I'm studying Srimad Bhagavatam, so some guidance when I'm stuck would be great. Yeah, I will type my email in the chat box. So then. So that's done. any other questions or doubts?
Okay, Maharaj, you want to send this email to everyone?
Yes, sure.
Okay, because I think it's just come to me at the moment. I will copy it and send it for everyone's attention. Okay, everyone.
Yeah,
Okay, right.
that's it, yeah.
Everybody has it now. Thank you, Maharaj. So, any questions, please ask Maharaj. As you know, Maharaj has a lot of knowledge that we can make use of. Any doubts that you have, any burning questions, anything that unsure of, this is the time to ask Maharaj about that. And it's a very, very interesting topic that you have chosen, Maharaj, and very important one, because we do blame other people, or we blame our past karma, etc., etc. But just trying to understand some perspective is very important. Mataji, you have your hand up, is it?
Yes, yes, Prabhuji.
Anji Mataji, carry on.
I wanted to ask this Maharaj, Swamiji, that Krishna has made three modes of nature. So I was thinking, actually I am confused if it is everything in Krishna's hand to give us we have to born and we have to die, and we have to be in the cycle of birth and death. So if it is all Krishna's mercy. So why doesn't Krishna decide to make only one mode of nature? And that is also in a goodness, the best one. So can't Krishna do that?
Thank you for your question. That Krishna is the servant of all living entities. He's the greatest servant. And he fulfills the desires of all living entities. Unfortunately, some living entities want to enjoy without Krishna. They want to become Krishna. How did we come here? That it's important to understand this a little more deeply. We understand from the philosophy that we are not his body. That in the Bhagavatam, in the 7th chapter, I'm just explaining things slowly so that you can understand that more deeply. In the 7th chapter, there you have in the beginning the Narada Muni instructed Srila Vyasadeva to meditate on the absolute truth with devotion. And then out of that meditation, then his vision for writing the Bhagavatam came. And there things are explained very clearly. That in one of these verses, Srila Prabhupada in the purpose writes, the living entity has, because we have now a material body, and that has a gross body and a subtle body. In the subtle body you have the thinking, feeling, willing. Right? Thinking, feeling, willing. That's the activities of the mind, thinking, feeling, willing. But Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, the living entity has its original thinking, feeling and willing in the unconditional state also. Let's try to understand that. In the beginning we were in the spiritual world. And we had the spiritual body, the body and the soul, the same thing. The same thing. And we had our own thinking, feeling and willing. It's a spiritual body made of Satchitananda. It's an eternal spiritual body in the spiritual world. There is no death, no birth. Now let's look at it. This spiritual body can only be used for one thing. It's service to Krishna with devotion. Spiritual body is charged with devotion. And we serve Krishna. But if you try with the spiritual body, if you desire just to do something which is not devotional service, but is for ourselves, then it's not possible with the spiritual body. It's not made for that. Then a gross body and a subtle body is created. In the subtle body, the thinking, feeling and willing, that is egocentric, is created. And that's why we are here. We desire to be the enjoyer ourselves. We desire to enjoy things and think this is mine, I and mine. And that's material consciousness. If you want to enjoy, you need a mode of passion. Without a mode of passion, there is no question of enjoyment. Therefore, Krishna created a mode of passion and ignorance. Passion and ignorance are modes in which we forget completely Krishna. Even goodness, material goodness, we forget Krishna. So, we are connected with these modes by our desires. And Krishna respects that. He does not intervene with the desires of the living entity. He respects the living entity and his desires. Because he feels himself a servant. You want to enjoy? You want to become Krishna and the controller and thinking this is I and mine? Fine, Krishna says. Please go. But there's one problem. I'm the controller. And there will be no fun if you remember me. So first you must forget me. And forgetting Krishna means the mode of passion and ignorance. So yes, it's with our desires. The fault lies in us. And Krishna respects our desires, and therefore he creates these modes so that we can fulfill our perverse desires. But Krishna gives us also the way out. And that's the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, how to live a life in goodness. It depends on us. But that's Krishna. He respects us. You want to think yourself the enjoyer and the controller? Good, go for it. You get my blessings, but you have to forget me. And become under the modes. But by the process of Krishna consciousness, if we follow the regulative principles, we can come to goodness. We can bring ourselves to goodness. But we must desire it. It's all based on desire, and that desire grows if we associate with devotees. Associate with the Bhagavatam, worship the deity, chant Hare Krishna. Then you come to goodness. And Krishna says, I descend to reclaim those in the pure mode of goodness, those who want to go back to the spiritual world. But most people in this world do not want to go back to the spiritual world. They are not interested in knowing Krishna. You tell them about God and they don't want to hear that. And that's the problem. And Krishna says, okay, you want that? You get my blessings and you forget me. So it's up to us. It's really up to us. Does that make sense? Hare Krishna.
Mataji, are you okay with that? I think Mataji's on mute. I think her microphone. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mataji, okay with that answer?
Yes, Prabhuji, I am fine with this answer. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Swamiji,
Sai Prabhupada.
Haribol.
Okay. So, any other questions? So, in the meantime, Maharaj, you're saying that in terms of spirituality, we should blame ourselves, as you gave an example as well with Lord Narayan blaming himself about his JVJ. So, but you know, in the material world, I mean, we are normally advised to say that look, whatever, you know, it's okay, this happened, it's the other person's problem, it's not your problem. You know, we're advised not to blame ourselves, because blaming ourselves for everything, it can lower our self-confidence because we think we can never do anything right, or lower self-esteem because, you know, we think that we're always wrong. And so, you know, how do we cope with that? Because we just keep blaming ourselves all the time. We think we're useless. You know, we can't think right. We're not intelligent. We can never do anything that you know, we can't conform to things. So how do we cope with that? If we just blame ourselves for everything that happens, although the other person might have a attitude problem or some other kind of problem, they might have some, you know, their own issues in life.
So a devotee came to Prabhupada and said, Srila Prabhupada, I'm a most fallen soul, he said. So Prabhupada said, you are not the most of anything. And then at another time, the devotee came to Srila Prabhupada and said that Srila Prabhupada, I'm most fallen. Srila Prabhupada said, yes, what are you going to do about it? So that's the point. That lamenting that I'm the most fallen, I'm becoming depressive. Oh, no. No, what are we going to do about it? So take action. That if you follow the process nicely, you will gradually come to the point to accept. And that's something I learned, and I'm still learning. We are all in the same boat, trying to learn and make spiritual advancement. I'm also in that process. I'm not a liberated soul or something. But I can say that, yes, and we see that in this pandemic, Krishna puts us in a certain situation. That just accept this situation as Krishna's mercy, and that's all right with me. You are poor, okay, Krishna, that's all right for me. Sudan Vipra never lamented, and because we undergo distress, but not really distress. Distress is for the body. You should not take that so serious. That just tolerate that, and it's also Krishna's mercy. That like Giraj Maharaj said, I heard that recently, that there was a mother, her daughter became a devotee, and they were from Hindu background, and the mother was worshipping the devatas, demigods. But then under the influence of our daughter, she started to worship Krishna alone and chant Hare Krishna. And she was doing that for some time, And then at the moment she broke her hip, and she was thinking, oh, now she gave up her Krishna consciousness. She said, this, I worship Krishna and see what I get. See what I get. This is the reaction of all the other devas who are dissatisfied, and she gave up Krishna conscious. And that's the essence of today, that we have to understand that whatever position we are in, it's Krishna's mercy. We need to accept it. That mercy can come in many forms, can come in happiness and distress, but Krishna says you have to be equal for that. And we need to learn that. And if we are determined, happiness or distress, I will continue serving Krishna, then we become dear to Krishna. And then you can go back to Godhead. And that's the point made today. That so in that sense, it's important. Does that help?
Yes, excellent. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Okay. See, the other thing is, I personally find myself sometimes that when somebody's going through a very bad period, then everything's going wrong, and then at other times everything will be going right. But most of the time that you find that some things are going very right, and some at the same time there's other things going wrong. This is the duality of the world. So I had this come in my mind. I mean, normally when things are going right, which part is right, you're happy with that, and which part is not going right, we are not so happy with that. But I just came into realization that, hang on, they're both mercy of Krishna, and they could both be tests as well. Krishna is testing me with the bad things that are happening to me, and Krishna is also testing me with the good things that are happening to me. So does that make sense, Maharaj?
That makes sense, because if you get solely opulence and so on, and you think this is mine, and you try to enjoy it, then Krishna will not be pleased. The idea is, if you get opulence and so on, you use it in Krishna's service, that's all, without attachment. So that's also a test. And distress, yes. But like we have in the 8th canto, the surrender of Bali Maharaj. Bali Maharaj surrendered everything. The universe, his prestige, because he could not fulfill his promise. He was rejected by his guru. He lost everything, Bali Maharaj. But one thing he did not lose, the Bhagavatam says, is his determination to please Vamandev, to please Lord Vishnu, to please Krishna. And that's what we must, whatever happens, like the gopis, the Narada Muni asked the gopis, that Krishna is a headache, he can only be cured by the dust of the lotus, that has touched the lotus feet of his pure devotees. The gopis said, here, please take the dust. And Narada Muni said, but are you not afraid to go to hell? What I've touched your feet is the most dirty thing, and you are going to put it on Krishna's head, you are going to hell. And the gopi said, if Krishna is pleased, it's okay, we are happy to go to hell. So that is the surrender, the complete surrender, what is required to go back to the spiritual world. Whatever Krishna does, it's all right. Yes, that's important, that we realize this before we leave our body. Then we will be in an auspicious situation.
Of course. Yeah, obviously, it takes time to develop that kind of mentality, an attitude, because we're so conditioned to think like everybody else, and we're sort of brought up that way to think in a normal way that opposite to what we should be thinking. So this is the nature of the material world, that everything seems to be upside down, isn't it? So yeah, it's wonderful to have associations like yourself, Maharaj, that we can get guidance. So what is right and wrong? What brings us closer to Krishna, and what takes us away? Because most of the time we're doing things that take us away from Krishna, and we need the saints, sadhus, that tell us that, oh, by the way, you're going the wrong way. This is like the sat-nav system. The sadhus tell us that you're going the wrong way. You need to turn around and follow this direction. So it's wonderful to have the association like yourselves, and it's wonderful that you joined us today to give class. Anybody has any questions? We are coming to close the class, so if you have a question, please ask now. Otherwise, we will go into Maharaj will do some quick announcements, and then you okay to do Narsinga prayer for us, Maharaj?
Okay, good.
Okay. So any questions, please ask now. Otherwise, I'm about to do some announcements, and then Maharaj is going to the Narsinga Arti. Anybody? Okay. Right. I'm just going to do some announcements, Maharaj. I'll come back. Thank you.
Okay.
So, with the announcements, this Tuesday we got a question answer session, and from 7:30 till 8 p.m. And then Friday, Srimad Bhagavatam with myself, 8 till 9. And this week, we'll talk about glories of Lord Anantadev. So we'll do that this Friday. The next Sunday speaker is His Grace Dinabandhu Prabhu from Manchester. And we'll talk about the deliverance of Jigai and Madai. And then we also have the Krishna Club running for children every Sunday, 11 till 12. And I think a lot of the devotees are going there now because the children are doing the Krishna Club. And I think they are joining the children rather than joining Sunday Family Sangha. So, okay, not to worry. That's wonderful. So that's the announcements for today. Maharaj, Narsimha, pray for yourselves, please.
Okay. Namaste.
Maharaj, you're on the mute, I think.
Yeah. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Paladaladaye. Paladaladaye. Hiranyakasipo Vakshaha. Hiranyakasipo Vakshaha. Shilatanka Nakalaye. Shilatanka Nakalaye. Eto Nishinga Parato Nishinga. Eto Nishinga Parato Nishinga. Yato Yato Yamitato Nishinga. Yato Yato Yamitato Nishinga. Bahe Nishingo Hidaye Nishingo Bahe Nishingo Hidaye Nishingo Nishinga Madim Sharanam Papade Nishinga Madim Sharanam Papade Tabakara Kamala Vare Nakam Abduta Shinhan Dalita Hiranyakasipo Tanubengam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisa Are Jai Jagadisa Are Jai Jagadisa Are Tavakara Kamala Varuna Kamabhuta Shringyam Dalitai Anyakasipo Tanuvingam Keshavadita Narahari Upachai Jagatisare Jai Jagadisare Jaya Jagadisare Jaya Nishingadev Jaya Nishingadev Nishingadev Jaya Nishingadev Jaya Palat Maharaj Jaya Palat Maharaj Palat Maharaj Shila Palat Maharaj Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Hari Bol.
Shri Lakshmi Nrsimhadev ki, Bhakta Prahlad Maharaj ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Wonderful to have you here today. And we look forward to many, many more associations. I'm going to give you 3 Hari Bols as a thank you, Maharaj. Hari Bol. Hari Bol. Hari Bol.